Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, way Shabbat Shalom, way Shabbat 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 Shalom. Hey, hey, Shabbat 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 Shalom, Lom, 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 Lom. Light the candles. To the prayers. On the path. On the path. On the path. People. On the path. People.
Shalom and welcome to People on the Path. Thank you, Yuri Lane, for welcoming all of us with your beatbox skills. We look forward to hearing more from you later on in today's People on the Path. My name is Adam Lowy, and I am the lifelong learning Moreh Derech at Beth Sholom. Each month, I will welcome dynamic guests to discuss, learn, and consider what it means to be on the path. How does an individual's choices impact their path? How do the various communities that an individual participates in change their lives forever? What unsuspecting moments became the powerful ones that inform personal and professional journeys? Where does one's relationship to their Jewish identity take surprising turns, and how does it spiritually manifest? I intend for these conversations to be intimate, unscripted, and formal and informal. The possibilities and potential will be infinite. The directions, ways, and paths will be explored, discovered, and open. So please come take a walk with me as we welcome Shabbat with People on the Path. This month's guests are both incredible, fascinating, and dear friends of mine. Some of you may know them from the mid-90s and the early 2000s here in San Francisco as educators at Beth Sholom and as vibrant members of the SF Jewish artist and community. You already met beatboxer Yuri Lane, and I'm also thrilled to welcome Rachel Haverlock. Before we bring in Rachel, I want to check in with Rabbi Ain. Rabbi Ain, come on in. Hey, Rabbi.
Hello, welcome to People on the Path. Like your theme song.
Thank you, that was awesome. How is it going? How's things going with you these days?
All right, thank God, we're doing well. Beth Sholom was excited to announce we've hired a new executive director. We just announced it yesterday, Vered Cohen, so we're very excited about that, thank God. Things are going well. I know this is the month of Cheshvan. You know, rabbis like to call it Mar Cheshvan, Bitter Cheshvan, because of all the holidays in Tishrei, and we don't have any holidays in Cheshvan, but that's okay. That's all right. We're all right, taking it down a notch a little bit. So how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. Yeah, trying to kind of find the way to kind of refresh and rejuvenate after all the intensity of the Chagim and settling into my new role at Beth Sholom. But things are well.
We're excited. We're excited with everything that's going on at Beth Sholom, and we're excited to have you take us on this path. So I'll come back in a little bit, maybe to participate in the conversation. But I always look forward to hearing from and learning with you and seeing the people who are on interesting, creative, religious paths. And I look forward to hearing from Rachel.
Thanks so much. We'll see you soon. All right, so that will bring us to my introduction of bringing in Rachel Haverlock. Racheli, can you open up your screen? Hi.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you.
It's such a treat to have this opportunity with you. And who would have known? Who would have known that when we met, that we'd be sitting here today on People on the Path? But I'm excited to hear about your path, and I'm excited that some of your path very much crossed with my path, and I know that many people here in the Beth Shalom community know who you are and learned with you, and some of them were younger children, students at that point, and now that they're adults, and then some of the adults are much older members of our community, and so I'm sure that many people are excited that you're here and want to hear what you're up to. So I want to take us to, well, before I jump in, how are you? How's it going in Chicago during this time?
We're doing okay in Chicago. I feel like we are in the midst of a new civil rights movement. And, I guess you don't have the eruption of a civil rights movement when everyone has rights. So, the violence and the discrimination is a heavy reality of this city, but there is a lot of vision and a lot of leadership by young people. And I have been proud to march behind them, sometimes to have them as students and serve as a professor and advisor. And then last weekend, Yuri and I were able to join a bike ride, also led by young people, showing us all of these gardens and city spaces that community members have transformed and reclaimed. And that was just a really beautiful vision of where things could go.
That sounds like some powerful activity. I'm glad to hear. And yeah, there's, yes, lots of intense things happening all over our country and the world. And I think we'll get to some of that a bit today as well. I wanna take us to when we met in Jerusalem. So you and I were both on the overseas program for a university, and it was just before winter. We were going on winter break, and we hadn't met yet the whole first semester. And I was in a friend of yours' dorm room, and in you walked, and they introduced me to you, and you said,
"I know who you are."
Yes.
I did know who you were.
And I was taken aback a bit, and then you told me why and how. Do you want to share that detail?
Yes, well, yeah, for everyone here, I like to say Adam and I are from the same shtetl. We are both from Jewish Detroit, and you were next door neighbors with my elementary school friend, Gabi Fleischer. And I would often go and sleep over at Gabi's house and have long sessions of choreography together. And she's like, across the street or next door, she's like, they're the Lowy brothers. And there were three, but she pointed out that the best looking of the three Lowy brothers was you. And so I had seen you in backyards and porches. And I also think in our the middle school hangout in our day, a place called Tally Hall, where there were all of these restaurants and old-fashioned games and, taking your picture. Remember the computer paper pictures?
Yeah, it was the original food court. It was the
original food court. You're right. But yeah, it was like the main attraction. You would just go and walk around there. So I think both from Gabi Fleischer's backyard and on days at Tally Hall, yeah, I totally knew who you were when we met in our earliest 20s, actually, in Jerusalem.
So I didn't know who you were. I didn't know that you had been watching me for many years.
Did you know Gabi had been watching you though?
I mean, Gabi and I were friends. We were friends, so it wasn't like, she didn't tell me. We had hung out. We would play together and stuff because we were young people in the neighborhood. Anyway, so but interestingly, when we met in Jerusalem, I think you dropped out like that night. You pretty much dropped out of the overseas program, and I'm not sure. I don't think we saw each other again that whole time in Israel.
Yeah, that's possible.
So tell me a little bit, like, what happened when you dropped out of the overseas program, because you stayed in Israel, and like, so what did you get into? I know you got into a lot, but a little bit, some of the brief highlights are like, kind of what were you searching for, and why did you leave the overseas program?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I'll say one good thing about that overseas program is I did get to study Hebrew poetry with the poet Yehuda Amichai. And just because we're talking about our life path, there was a really significant moment which might have fueled my dropping out, because at the time I was studying modern Hebrew literature. And I was in this class and I worked so hard to analyze all the poems. And one day the great poet Yehuda Amichai said to me, he's like, you really shouldn't be studying modern Hebrew literature. And it was like a stake in my heart. I was like, dashing my dreams. And he said, I paid attention. Every single question that you ask me is about the Tanakh. Like, all you ever want to know is you just always inquire about the biblical references. And so he said to me, forget literature, like, go study Tanakh, and then you'll understand all of Hebrew literature. So Amichai said that to me. I mean, I guess I could have switched my major, but I was unsettled during that time in Jerusalem, because even though, I know people don't really do overseas programs anymore, Birthright kind of pushed that aside, which I think is a shame because it's not as immersive, but I was very unsettled by Jerusalem. And I was really, really into hiking at the time. So I would, get my boots on and go hiking around Jerusalem. And I was very often pulled out of Palestinian neighborhoods by Israeli police and soldiers who would yell at me, like, you don't know where you are, what are you doing? And I would be like, no, I actually don't know where I am, but I'm wandering around trying to figure it out. But I will say, when I would wander around and not be pulled out by the police or the military, I did have like contact just with Palestinian people. And it was unsettling for me. I think, I think we'll get to it, but I grew up going to Jewish day school. So, my love of Tanakh, as Amichai said, and my really strong, really passionate. And I had never been given a language or an insight or really any way to account for Palestinians and Palestine. And so my only reference point, was my upbringing in Detroit, where my mother was a inner city public high school teacher. And I was like, yeah, this is like going into inner city Detroit, which everyone is convinced is dangerous and risky, but it's because we're misreading poverty and we're misreading oppression. So yeah, Jerusalem at that time didn't sit well with me. And the program, I think, leaned a little bit too much on propaganda. And we were college students. And I think, not enough on critical thinking. So I hit the road. I'm not saying I necessarily did anything noble with these thoughts, but I wandered around. And I spent a lot of time at Kibbutz Ein Harod up in the Galilee. And then I spent some time with the Hebrew Israelites, also known as the Black Hebrews. I spent some time on their kibbutz down in Dimona. I spent a lot of time in the Sinai Desert, hanging out with the Bedouin. And just one moment on that is really, really a moment, the really life-changing moment. I was with some friends and some Bedouin friends, and we had gone kind of deeper into the desert off the Red Sea coast. And it was just beautiful. And we were riding camels. And I climbed up a mountain with a Bedouin friend and looked down into the valley. And it was filled with plastic water bottles. Because of course, when everyone, myself included, went to Sinai, went to Egypt, we were told not to drink the water. So we drank all of this water in plastic bottles. And then, they went somewhere. And that somewhere, was in this desert valley. And, my nickname, which I got it in that time from a Bedouin friend. And I remember Ibrahim, a friend of mine, turning and saying, Rahele, you've got to do something about the plastic. This like, we can't withstand this. So that was very influential. But one last experience that I had during that time was I had an adoptive family, the Rappaport family of Ra'anana. And they really, really brought me into their family. And at the end of that time, I stayed at their house, and their kids were all around my age, and everyone was kind of like, post-army and in the house. So I also had this experience of living with this Israeli family, which was also really formative because, I me and you and Yuri, children of the 80s, I was from a divorced family. And I hadn't really lived, with the whole integral families before. So that, also really gave to me what a healthy family and relationship can look like.
So you had this experience in Israel, and then you were going to return to Santa Cruz to finish college, right? And so what was going on for you that last year of college? And then how did that kind of parlay to you moving up to San Francisco?
Yeah, my last year of college, I sort of listened to Amichai. I got really, really into studying Tanakh. I had the great fortune of having a teacher, in the classical sense of, a mentor. Actually, I've had a few, and I'd like to say all their names tonight, but this was Professor Michel Caspi. And, Caspi just got me, and he knew I had a lot of desire to do things in an unconventional way, that I didn't like hierarchy, that I didn't really want to listen, but that I had curiosity. And he, he just was so flexible and such a model of being a professor, because I remember at one point turning to him and saying, what am I supposed to do next? Do I go to rabbinical school? And he said to me very clearly, he's like, not you. He said, you have something to give, but you are not a follower of rules. And he said, so, you can go in a program, but you're going to be like this against it. And he's like, no, just live with this text, the Tanakh, you love it and it speaks to you, and just figure out, how to be a modern day interpreter of that text. And and Caspi, wanted me to get my PhD, and he wanted me to publish, but he, instead of saying, go right away, go here, go there, he said to me in those questions of what do I do now? He's like, no, I think we'll write a book together. So I graduated with my BA in comparative literature, and I moved up to San Francisco and started sitting in my apartment on Golden Gate and reading the Book of Ruth, putting it together. And as I was sitting in my apartment reading Tanakh and feminist theory, I then thought, well, I'm having a lot of ideas about this. I should maybe go out and start talking about it. So that I sort of went on this kind of academic path, but instead of formally going to school first, I sort of did this independent scholarship and then found my way to community teaching.
So I love that that you had somebody who got you. It's so critical for anybody in a mentor-mentee relationship to have somebody that actually gets you and encourages you to be you. And I love that you also have a few mentors that you want to mention, and I'd like you to do that now so we don't forget. Who are the other couple mentors that you do want to make sure you acknowledge?
Yeah, I mean, after Professor Michel Caspi, the next two mentors were at the time associated with Beth Sholom. Janet Harris, who was a brilliant mentor to me and, really told me straight, how to do things. And really took creativity seriously and, helped me to see the power of teaching and community work. And, the next major influence and mentor was Rabbi Lew. And, Rabbi Lew, on the one hand, just through example of just being a living interpreter. I mean, I always related to him because I feel like Tanakh and Jewish tradition, also moved through him. And he spoke it in a form of like understanding its many layers of meaning while adding his own that was so original. And so I think, for me, I know that Rabbi Lew's Zen practice and Zen Judaism had a huge impression on so many people. But for me, it was really Rabbi Lew, the scholar, and in particular, Rabbi Lew, the orator. I mean, I don't think before or since I've ever heard someone on the Bima, really like bring forth words of Torah that were also living words in a modern time. And like Michelle Caspi, I feel that Janet Harris and Rabbi Lew, they were the kind of mentors, that got me. And it wasn't, I mean, the economy was a little bit different there too, because people weren't so worried about supporting themselves and paying their rent as young people now have to be. It's kind of, you could pull together your $300 and get your rent paid at that time. But, I feel like they really opened up possibilities to me. And so for Rabbi Lew, it was by influence, but also like he would make the Beth Shalom Bima available to me, as a young woman in my early 20s. And that gave me, I mean, I would take it. I have been blessed, to have confidence, but he really gave me authority and validation, myself as an interpreter and a speaker. And one more name I really want to put out there, another great Bay Area mentor when I did get to graduate school, was Professor Daniel Boyarin.
Excellent. Explain, give me a little more detail on how he made the Bima available to you. He actually asked you to address the congregation at that age, and
yes.
And what was your role in the congregation at that point?
Oh, I was a teacher. So I came to Beth Shalom. It was really my first big post-college job. And at that time, I was running the Rosh Chodesh group. So I was working with the women of Beth Shalom, but Hebrew school was my place. Pretty much from 1995 to 2002. I worked with, I think, everyone in 7th grade, 10th grade, sometimes 12th grade. I had one class. I met them as 4th graders and I stayed with them through their confirmation. So I don't know how Hebrew school is now, but back then it was Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday. And I was a teacher. I was the assistant principal of the religious school at one point. And so I just had a chance to teach and interact with so many fantastic people. I remember those classes so vividly, and that I hope they think the same thing, but we had really a lot of fun. Oh, and so giving me the Bima. So when Rabbi Lew had another gig or was traveling or was a guest rabbi somewhere else, and sometimes just cause, he would say, you take this one. And, not looking over my shoulder, not thinking what's she gonna say, but he just gave it to me.
Wow.
And, I had his model. I mean, I did it in my own way. But, that was a huge moment. And that's, I think, what a great mentor does, is sometimes just trust people and give them the platform.
So just if you do want to know what's happening with the Shabbat school now, I could tell you because I'm creating that at the moment. But yes, we'll get to that at another time. So you're having this experience. Your post.
Wait, Adam, I think we have to say something about our own friendship though, because in this whole time you and I were hanging out
Oh no,
and
we're
really
gonna
close
we're gonna get
friends.
to that. We're gonna get to that in a second for sure. And we also wanted to acknowledge when you hired me for a program with your teens. Do you want to talk about our trip to Big Basin, our overnight trip to Big Basin at all? And
Yeah,
we're on our Big Basin right now.
I can't exactly remember the year that this was, but I do remember that I was teaching a confirmation class. I remember who was in it, but I won't name names. And prior to the confirmation ceremony, we took that class up to Big Basin, beautiful redwoods north of Santa Cruz. And we took this group of 9th and 10th graders in a van, and we all had tents and hiking boots. And we hiked, I think, 2 nights in Big Basin, and we did a pretty serious hike. We did the 3 waterfall hikes, the 3 waterfalls in one day, and we set it up so it was like a walking Shabbat. You know, we would walk and stop and read poetry and sort of have, questions that opened up conversations and spiritual exploration, and we would stop and study texts. And I think you and I and our other 2 friends that led it, we came up with these different kind of meditation studies for different points of that hike. And I remember when we got to that 3rd waterfall, just being, especially with my students who were teenagers, and all that you go through in your teenage life. And I just remember us all reaching that waterfall, having our bathing suits on, like under our clothes, and like standing there in that water, all together. And it was just such a moment of just mikvah, of oneness with nature, of just really recognizing, just the beautiful spirits of those teenagers. But I also remember we were kind of young ourselves. We neglected to bring enough water to drink on that hike. So there were some very thirsty teens, although hopefully spiritually inspired, however thirsty.
Yeah, that was amazing. And it was also, I mean, it was a pretty unprecedented move in some ways to like take those teens out there. And I wonder, like, how were you supported by Rabbi Lou? Like, did he know we took? I mean, one of his daughters.
His daughter, Hannah Lou was there.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about you and I at that time, because you were living on McAllister, and I was living right around the corner on Lyon, and your home was pretty much like the epicenter of our Jewish life and world at that point, in the sense that we did events, had meals, celebrated Chagim. So, tell me a little bit about like what were you trying to create? Was it for us? Was it for you? Was it for the community? You were definitely the leader, and you had like us who were super supportive and had skills and knowledge to add, but it was, you were the driver. So like, tell me a little bit about that at that time, and what was your intention?
Yeah. I mean, and again, part of being in San Francisco and, just the queer history of the city and all the alternative lifestyles, I think it was my thought of how you make family. And at that stage, I just wasn't of the mind of like nuclear family wasn't where I was going. It wasn't exactly what was on my mind or what I was aspiring to. But, just thinking about how to share time with people, like how to share that period of life, like how to make a family and just have those moments of generosity and reliance on people, and also, fun. And I was really at the time like super inspired by Arthur Waskow's Seasons of Our Joy, of just thinking about time is not just like this progressive linear march, but that, we're in a cycle, and it's the seasons, and it's our bodies, and it's our, development. And so I just thought, like the way to kind of live and, do this like family scenario with your chosen family, with the people, who you found. I was like, we should be living these seasons of our joy. And, I was really immersed in Jewish texts and Jewish life. And, again, like I said, like Rabbi Lou, his interpretations and his Torah just made it like so vivid and so present and so living. And I think I also kind of wanted my own version of that. And so, yeah, I mean, all those holiday celebrations, like all those meals.
I love that you say that it brought it to life. Like it brought the Torah and your kind of connection to life, because I'm going to pull up a photograph right now for us. Because not only were you like kind of, revolutionary, you like took these teenagers camping and did kind of a Jewish weekend experience. You were building these, you were writing like Pesach Seder, Magid, a play for like 30 people, like in your home, and like specifically given characters based on how you knew people. And then you also then somehow got Yuri and I, because now the Yuri kind of entered the picture, and he was beatboxing, and I was, a hip hop head and like to rhyme. And so somehow you got this to happen. So I'm going to show a picture real quick, and I want you to tell us about this. You tell us what's going on here.
Okay, so this was like, was it called Pesach Palooza? I feel like Haggadah Palooza. Yeah, I feel like everything ended up with a palooza at the end in this time. So here we are at Shereth Israel, and this was Haggadah Palooza, and they wanted to have this programming to kind of make the Pesach story in the Haggadah come to life. So here it's you and Yuri and myself as you're Aaron the high priest. Yuri there with his staff is Moses, and I am Miriam with my tambourine in hand. And yeah, we wrote a whole piece of being the prophetic trio. I can't remember exactly what my role was, but I sort of like your rap with Yuri's beats in the background, like still runs through my memory. You want to drop a verse?
I'm going to take this down. It's just an amazing, amazing photo. I'm so glad we found it to share. And that was, again, just like, so unique. Like, who else was doing that? And like, I forgot who the rabbi was, but, good for him for letting us have that moment and to kind of create what was kind of biblical theater, music, beatbox performance. I think after that, we like went in and kind of did the Magid in like beatbox theater, and you kind of told it and Yuri made sound effects. I think that's kind of what happened.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
All right, so speaking of Yuri, so at this point, like, we could keep going about San Francisco for a long time, but there's other amazing things going on for you. And so I want to just have this kind of, it's going to feel like a bit of a strange interlude, but we're going to jump into a second kind of like what you're up to now in academic stuff and how that continued to flourish for you. But we're going to frame it with Yuri. So Yuri, can you come back and give us a little bit more beats?
Yes, I'm going to start. Joshua fought the battle at Jericho, Jericho, Jericho. Joshua fought the fight at Jericho, and the walls came tumbling down. Joshua fought the fight at Jericho, and the walls came tumbling down. Tumbling down. Break down the walls. Break down the walls of oppression, of racism, occupation. Jericho fought the fight. Joshua fought the fight at Jericho, Jericho, Jericho. Joshua fought the fight at Jericho, and the walls came tumbling down.
Awesome. Thank you, Yuri, for the frame. All right, so now Racheli, now you have to explain like what was that specifically about? What does that have to do with what you are up to these days?
Okay, well, I've got my prop, newest book. Yep. The Joshua generation, and happy to share with my first workplace that not only that the book is out with Princeton University Press, but that gave me my promotion to full professor here at the University of Illinois at Chicago. And so obviously after the Bay Area, I got my PhD at Berkeley and got a job here in Chicago, and have done a lot of work on biblical interpretation. And what I would say, like my identity as a biblical scholar, is that I still go to all these like biblical meetings and conferences and things, and the text, whether we're talking about Israeli or Jewish politics or American politics, biblical texts have political meanings and political interpretations. But very often scholars like to hide and pretend that they're doing an objective reading and that they're not engaged and that the politics aren't a part of it. But if someone is a Hebrew Bible scholar, and it's the case for me, over the years, a large part of my life continued on in Israel, and I couldn't separate it. I couldn't separate the biblical text from modern politics, and I decided to stop trying to. Why not talk about these things at once? So, what this book has to say is the following. Joshua, as people may know, but modern Jews or American Jews, aren't big fans of the book of Joshua, because the beginning, it's a pretty horrible story of, it seems to be of genocide, of extermination, of constant war. But I wanted to dive into the worst of the biblical books. And the interesting conclusion that I came to is that if you keep reading Joshua, if you go past the really dramatic battles and the military men marching in formation, and you go to the second half of the book of Joshua, all of the peoples who were allegedly wiped out in the battles are all still there as neighbors. And, the great unity of the army of Israel, when you move on to the second half, it's like peoples. There's tribes and clans and families, and they live next to each other and they share resources and there's tensions. So in other words, my reading of the book of Joshua is that the first half of the book, the military stories, represent a kind of a political attempt to take all these different and diffuse groups on the ground and unify them through this story of a grand battle and a war that decided everything. So in other words, I'm like, this desire for unity and nationalism and, male hegemony, if you will, that's aspirational. But we can read that story of militarization, of battle, it's it's overcompensating for the fact that there isn't unity on the ground. There's fragment, there's alliance, there's good times, there's bad times. And so that reading of the book of Joshua itself is sort of repeated, if you will, in modern Israel. Because the really interesting piece here is that in 1958, David Ben-Gurion, the great founder and prime minister, held a Joshua study group in his home twice a month on Fridays. It was his people on the path, Adam. This was Ben-Gurion's, people on the path, but they studied Joshua twice a month. And in Ben Gurion's, around Ben Gurion's dining room table, the elite of Israel basically coded the story of the 1948 war in the language of Joshua. So it happened 10 years after the war. It happened in 1958.
What
when
does
the
coded,
state of
what does
Israel,
coded mean? What is coded?
okay. Like they told the story, they created a public narrative for the celebration of a decade of independence in the language of Joshua. So that like the word for the modern Israeli occupation is the same word for Joshua's conquest.
Oh, wow.
So at the Independence Day celebrations in 1958, Ben Gurion and the elite produced Memorial Day, or like produced a kind of public celebration of Independence Day in the story of Joshua. And when they did that, this is what I mean by coded, they sort of like alluded to the relationship between Israelis and Palestinians as being like that of ancient Israelites and Canaanites.
Yeah. Wow. So I want to bring in Rabbi Ain. I'm not a Hebrew Bible scholar as much as I am an educator, and I know Rabbi Ain is listening closely to what you've been sharing. Rabbi, welcome back. What have you a question, a follow up to all that about the book of Joshua?
I have about 30 follow up. I mean, if you want to know the truth, I mean, it's just which direction do you want to take it in? Let me start with my first question before I ask about the Joshua generation. Adam, you just cut me off. I mean, at some point it's going to be nightfall and we're going to have to stop. So, it was Caspi who told you not to be a rabbi?
Yeah.
Was he right?
Yeah.
Do you still build community? What is Adam and you and Adam shared these wonderful stories of sort of building community. Do you still do that?
Yes, it's changed. There was one more iteration that looked something like what Adam and Yuri and I and others were doing in San Francisco. When I got to Chicago, the organization Next Book was having a lot of literary events. So with two friends here in Chicago, Next Book supported us having a salon. So at this point, right, with Adam, we were all in our 20s. In the Chicago version, when we were in our 30s, Next Book allowed us to, just to, do the Xeroxing and order some food for everyone. And we would meet, our group it was, Jews, friends of Jews and those married, but, we were basically all one way or the other Jewish identified. And we would get together once a month and we would read the same things. We read Rabbi Lou's book for one of them. And so we would read things that were kind of seasonally or appropriate to what was going on. And so I was the leader of that salon. So that had a sort of a second iteration here in Chicago. But now, yeah, I'm at a Joshua generation and all, I'm at a little bit of a different juncture. And my identification, as a Jew, and obviously my leaning on it for solace in these times of trouble is profound. But what I'm up to now, it's not so much, ethnic and religious as I'm really focused on water issues and climate change. And so the community now is with water leaders of different backgrounds, and we're all like coming together to try to speak up for environmental justice and preservation of fresh water amidst climate change. So I still feel like I'm a community person, but shifted a little bit from my personal identity to more like being a resident of the Lake Michigan watershed.
Yeah, and I never had the blessing of getting to meet Rabbi Lou, but I've certainly heard wonderful stories and read his beautiful writings and his beautiful sermons. And one of the things that he does push for is for a relationship with the divine. And I'm curious, as someone who's really sort of broken down from a scholarly perspective and has lived in Israel and has been on this path that has been calling to you, really, I related so much to your experience with overseas studies and then being told not to be a rabbi because I'm not a rule follower, so don't go be a rabbi. And so I went to law school instead, which was really not a good, so I think you can be a non-rule follower at heart and go into the rabbinate. I'm curious, what's your spiritual? Can you share a little bit about your spiritual life?
Yeah, I mean, it's it's quiet. Like I'm not a proselytizer, but I am a believer. I do think that the world that we're in is creation. I think it's sacred. I think it has to be acknowledged and protected. I think that's part of what a religious life is. And I mean, I also feel, very strongly. I mean, it's interesting, like in those moments, of need, but I feel like in the darkest moments of my life, it was very much like a divine, thread, if you will, that pulled me through. So, like it's a quieter thing for me. I don't think even in my teaching, even in my Jewish teaching, like that was first and foremost, although, certain classes will remember my great belief in the reality of prophets. That is. And Rabbi Lou's visions and orations, were also ways of, I think in a way, like peeling back so that, we could recognize that there is a divine core at the center of things as well, in his political work, especially around homelessness, which was very brave, especially when things are out of balance, and that the pursuit of justice is, in a way, trying to bring balance back into creation.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Rachel and Rabbi, we have about 10 minutes to do a few things, so we're going to try to do them all. One is do some candle lighting and some other necessities for the community, and also was hoping to get Yuri in again before 6:03. I think is our deadline. And then there's also this thing that I would love to do, which is the people on the path speed round questions. And so these are questions that I ask all the guests, and you don't know them ahead of time. And so if you're ready, Racheli, I'd like to go into a little bit of that real quick. So when you're on the path, 5 things that you have to have with you.
Oh, 5 things I have to have up with me on the path: a water bottle, comfortable shoes, a pen, a notebook, and a sense of humor.
Nice. Yuri, you want to hit that one? You got 5 things on your path?
A harmonica, a healthy voice, snacks. Gotta have snacks. I'm gonna go with a water bottle and dance.
Nice. All right. Who would you like to walk the path with? Maybe they can be someone that's passed, somebody that's alive now, or somebody in their future self. Who would you like to walk the path with?
Okay, that's good. Elijah the prophet. Oh man, I mean, you can't name certain friends because then you wouldn't have the other ones. But while we're here on Zoom, right? Yuri is my life partner, so I'm not going down it without him. I would, really like to have our daughter there with us. Are there 5 people with us?
Oh no, it was just it was just kind of as many as you wanted.
As many as you want, yeah. And like on the path, there's like a core of wonderful friends like yourself among them. And just like it is and will be and continue to be, just like an honor to be on the path with you.
Thank you. Yes, in case people didn't know, Yuri and Rachel are a married couple and have a beautiful daughter as well. And I know that her age has brought some questions about Jewish life and continuity as well into your discussions and lives. And I also failed to mention, as we were talking about kind of the San Francisco days, but I think it's needed that we say that I met my beautiful wife and life partner at your home at a Yom Kippur break the fast. So just thought we should acknowledge that, and I almost forgot to do that. Yuri, one person, give us one that you would like to walk the path with, someone that you haven't had the chance to do that with.
Oh, I'd like to walk the path with Charlie Chaplin.
Oh yeah.
I just just navigating the world with Charlie Chaplin and just so inspired by his movies and just recently that speech that he gave was like his speaking part when the only time he spoke, talking about fascism and Nazis and he just a genius. And I read a book about him when we were in the UK. And then of course, just walking the path with my family and my community, a caravan of love and the Lichtensteins and the Stammels and the Haverlocks.
Thank you. So I'm just going to ask this last one for Rachel, and then you're going to give us your kind of interpretation of your answer to this to take us into Shabbat, and we're also going to go to Rabbi to do a couple things. But Rachel, the last question: what do you see ahead of you on the path?
Yeah, I mean, now my aspiration, it might sound a little incongruous, but I want to be a water commissioner. I really want to, whether on a city, state, or national level, I really want to be involved with water governance. Back to the sacred, that first element of creation, it is water. It's a gift of God and the glaciers, and so necessary for life and for us to go on. And so, yeah, this part of my life is really, really devoted to environmental issues. So yeah, I'm trying to get going to run a water system and keep it public and equitable.
Well, we're blessed to have you making that decision for your next work and passion, because clearly from today's time together, you do what you do and you do it. It happens, and it happens in amazing ways. And I'm just so grateful to have you. And I'm going to pass it to Rabbi Ain to take it.
We're running out of time here. So a few things I wanted to say. I put the link to your book in the chat there if anybody wants to go. It was Amazon's. I apologize for putting Amazon in there, but it was the easiest for me to find on short notice. Also, I just want to say, Rachel, in the comments, you have a bunch of your former students and fans that have noted you. So, for example, it says here, Judy Leash writes, I remember describing you as a breath of fresh air. Debbie Frank said, such fond memories of you as Jeremy's teacher. And Lori Weisberg says, you were an excellent teacher for my sons, Brian and Matthew Goldman. Thank you, Rachel. And I just want to say, Brian Goldman just argued a case in front of the United States Supreme Court just last week. So that's Brian. So that's an amazing student of yours. We are running out of time. And so the first thing I wanted to do is, as we approach Shabbat, we're going to acknowledge those members of our community who have passed away in recent weeks, as well as those who will be observing a yard site in the upcoming week. So we remember Shelley Mindick, who's the father of Roberta Mindick Fink, who passed away just a couple of weeks ago. And those for whom we will be observing a yard site: Victor Abrams, Sydney Angel, Frida R. Karp, Rose Gershon, Jacob Goldstein, Saul Grin, Charles Kellerman, Jeanette Spicer Kelson, Henry Chaim Levy, Victor Mashbein, Abram Moses, Ruth Raphael, and Ruth Sachs. May their memories continue and always be a blessing for our community. And let us say amen.
Amen.
And at this point now, I am going to, you're going to do a beatbox, and I've got some Shabbos here. So why don't you do it? You do your thing.
Shabbat Shalom. Light the candles. Break that bread. Bless that wine. Heavenly divine. Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitanu v'titav v'tzivanu lahad likner shel Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Thank you to Rachel. I'm sorry we were so cut short for time. I feel like we could have, hopefully we'll have many more times to carry on the conversation and talk plenty more about Tanakh. Yuri, you continue to be awesome. Thank you for all of the music. Adam Lowy, great job. You've got a minute to wrap it up, Adam.
Rachel and Yuri, so much love and respect and gratitude. Thank you so much for doing this and for joining us. I hope you have the exact Shabbat experience that you want, everybody. I encourage you to find your footing and balance this Shabbat weekend and beyond. I encourage you to walk your path with courage, wonder, curiosity, and an open mind, body, and spirit. And I wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom. Rabbi, have a great Shabbos. Racheli, thanks again. Much love, Yuri. Peace, everybody.
Shalom. Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shalom.